Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a close look at the 1973 Washington quarter dollar from the United States of America and exploring why some examples can be much more interesting to collectors than their face value suggests. If you have a 1973 quarter sitting in an old coin collection jar or tucked away in a box of change, then you will definitely want to stay with us because condition, rarity, errors, varieties, and exceptional mint state examples can all have an important effect on a coin's value. In this video, we will examine the history of the 1973 Washington quarter and explain what the D mint mark means and why it is important when identifying this coin. We will also look at the coin's design, composition, size, and major identifying characteristics, so you can compare your own 1973 quarter with the examples discussed in this video. Most ordinary circulated examples are not automatically worth thousands or millions of dollars, so it is important to understand the difference between an everyday coin and a genuinely scarce collectible example. This is why two coins with exactly the same year and mint mark can have very different market values. Let's get started. The 1973 D Washington quarter, which carries the important D mint mark showing that this quarter was produced at the Denver Mint in the United States of America. And if you have one of these coins sitting inside an old collection, a coin jar, a box of inherited coins, or even somewhere in your everyday change, then you may be wondering whether this familiar 25-cent piece could actually be worth more than its face value. And the answer depends heavily on its condition, rarity, errors, varieties, and overall preservation. Because although the ordinary circulated 1973 D Washington quarter is generally not a $1,000,000 coin, there can still be interesting examples that attract collectors, especially when exceptional preservation or an unusual mint error is involved. And this is exactly why you should never judge a coin only by its age, because condition and rarity can completely change the collecting value of an otherwise common coin. And in this video, we are going to examine its history, design, composition, mint mark, condition, grading, collector interest, and realistic market values, while also explaining what you should look for before deciding whether your own 1973 D quarter deserves a closer examination. The 1973 D Washington quarter belongs to the long-running Washington quarter series that began in 1932 and continued through many decades of American history. And by 1973, the quarter was no longer made from the 90% silver composition used for Washington quarters dated from 1932 through 1964. Because the United States Mint had moved to a copper-nickel clad composition beginning in 1965, as a response to rising silver prices and changing economic conditions, and the 1973 D quarter therefore has a copper core surrounded by layers of copper-nickel material, and it weighs approximately 5.67 grams with a diameter of approximately 24.3 millimeters and a reeded edge according to NGC information. And the design continues to feature George Washington on the obverse with the familiar eagle design on the reverse. And these characteristics are important because collectors use the date, mint mark, composition, weight, diameter, edge, and design details together when identifying a coin. And if someone claims that every 1973 D quarter is made from silver, or that every example from this year is extremely rare, then that claim should be treated with caution, because the standard 1973 D issue is a copper-nickel clad quarter, rather than a regular silver quarter. One of the most important details on this particular coin is the D mint mark. And for collectors, the mint mark provides information about where the coin was manufactured. And the D indicates the Denver Mint, which produced a substantial quantity of these quarters in 1973. And the reported mintage for the 1973 D Washington quarter is 232,977,400 pieces, which means that the normal issue is not considered a scarce coin simply because it carries the 1973 date and D mint mark. And this is a very important point for anyone creating a video about valuable coins, because the enormous mintage means that ordinary circulated examples are generally worth close to their face value rather than automatically being worth hundreds, thousands, or millions of dollars. And yet large production numbers do not mean that every individual coin is identical, because millions of coins entered circulation, and many were heavily worn, damaged, scratched, cleaned, or otherwise affected, while a much smaller number survived in exceptional condition. And those high-grade survivors can attract substantially greater collector interest than ordinary circulated examples. Now let us talk specifically about the 1973 D Washington quarter in fine condition, because this is the condition mentioned for the coin in our video and fine. Condition means that the coin has experienced noticeable circulation, but the major design features remain visible and recognizable. And on the obverse, you should still be able to identify Washington clearly, while some details in the hair and facial areas will show where, and on the reverse, the eagle and surrounding lettering should remain visible. Although the highest points of the design will normally show considerable friction and flattening, and collectors generally distinguish fine from very fine, extremely fine about uncirculated and mint state grades by carefully examining the amount and location of where rather than simply looking at whether the coin appears old or shiny. And current pricing information from NGC indicates that circulated 1973D quarters can fall around the lower value range, with its guide showing approximately 30 cents through 85 cents across circulated grades, while higher uncirculated grades can reach substantially higher values, so a normal fine example should not be presented as a guaranteed rare fortune, but it can still be an interesting historical collectible and an excellent addition to a Washington quarter collection. The next important subject is the difference between face value and collector value. And this distinction is extremely important when discussing coins on YouTube, because many online videos make dramatic claims about ordinary coins supposedly being worth millions of dollars, and viewers can easily become confused about what is realistic and what is simply promotional language. And a standard 1973D Washington quarter in circulated fine condition is generally not worth millions of dollars, and there is no reliable evidence that an ordinary fine example should be valued at $1 million, and current published price guides support a much more modest valuation for circulated examples. But that does not mean the coin is uninteresting, because the real excitement begins when you inspect the coin for unusual characteristics such as major striking errors, wrong planchet strikes, dramatic off-center strikes, doubled dies, or other recognized varieties. And an authentic significant mint error can be dramatically more valuable than an ordinary example, depending on its type, condition, eye appeal, and certification history. Another fascinating aspect of the 1973D Washington quarter is the possibility of exceptional condition, and this is where the difference between a normal circulated coin and a high-grade uncirculated specimen becomes especially important. And a coin that has spent decades moving through pockets, cash registers, drawers, and coin counting machines can easily collect scratches, contact marks, discoloration, and edge damage, while a coin that was carefully preserved shortly after leaving the mint can retain much sharper details and cleaner surfaces. And professional grading services evaluate coins using standardized grading systems that can range from circulated grades through mint state grades, and current NGC information lists values that rise substantially for the finest grades, with its guide showing higher figures for exceptional mint state examples, and PCGS also lists significant price differences across high mint state grades for the 1973D issue, which demonstrates why collectors pay close attention to preservation, and why the same date and mint mark can have very different market values depending on grade when examining your own 1973D quarter. There are several areas that deserve careful attention, and the first is the date, because you want to make certain that the coin really is dated 1973. And the second is the mint mark, because the D should be visible on the obverse. And the third is the overall condition of the surfaces, because a circulated coin with extensive scratches is very different from a coin that has strong original surfaces. And the fourth area is the edge, because unusual edge characteristics can sometimes provide clues about mint errors. And the fifth area is the weight, because genuine major errors can sometimes produce unusual weights, depending on how the coin was struck and what planchet was involved. And if you believe you have discovered something unusual, then avoid cleaning the coin, because cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces and may reduce collector appeal. And instead photograph both sides under good lighting, and consider having the coin examined by a reputable professional or grading service when the suspected error appears significant. There is also an important lesson here about the word uncirculated, because many people use the term simply to describe a coin that looks shiny, but professional grading is much more complicated. And an uncirculated coin should not show the normal friction from circulation, and even coins that have never circulated can have marks from the minting process and contact with other coins. And this means that a bright-looking 1973D quarter is not automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and it is equally important not to polish or chemically clean the coin in an attempt to make it look newer, because collectors generally prefer original surfaces, and artificial cleaning can leave hairlines or other evidence that negatively affects the coin. And current guides show that the value increase becomes much more meaningful in higher certified grades, rather than simply because a coin appears bright to the naked. Now let us discuss the possibility of major errors, because this is one area where a common coin can sometimes become genuinely interesting, and auction records demonstrate that unusual 1973 Washington quarter errors have attracted significant prices. For example, Coin World reports a 1973 Washington quarter struck on a 10-cent planchet that sold for $399.50 in a heritage auction sale. And this is an excellent example of why collectors should separate ordinary examples from genuine mint errors, because the value comes from the unusual manufacturing mistake, rather than simply from the date 1973 and the D mint mark. And if you discover an apparent error, it should be authenticated, because many supposed errors are actually damage that occurred after the coin left the mint, and an authentic certified error can be much more desirable than an ordinary circulated quarter. But the exact value depends on the specific error and its grade. Thanks for watching.